All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Left Plan 2 board meeting for our December 18th, 2024. I'd like to call the meeting to order and start off with a moment of silence to remember our brothers and sisters, police and fire, as well as those in military. All right, thank you very much. Looking at our members present, as well as those who are joining us virtual, we do have a quorum, and we will start off with the approval of our November minutes. Entertain a motion to adopt as presented.
So moved. Second.
Motion been made, seconded to adopt the minutes as presented. Any discussion? Comments? Seeing or hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Minutes are adopted. Thank you very much. Item number 2 is the authorized leave of absence service credit comprehensive report. Jacob's going to do that, and by way of a little bit of a background.
Yeah, this is, in one way or another, it's an issue that the board has been talking about for a couple of years now. As Jacob discussed earlier, this interim, the issue is kind of morphed. Deals with a very small group of people who are on an authorized leave of absence at the end of their career and are unable to return to work. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Jacob.
For the record, Jacob White, staff to the board. Yeah, so this issue we did work on last year. I gave a couple reports as we kind of started off with the what was brought to the board by a member initially, and then working with DRS to pinpoint what the underlying issue was and what possible solutions there could be for it. So the issue we identified was that some Left 2 members are unable to purchase service credit when they are out on temporary non-duty disability leave because of the definition of basic salary and the requirements of purchasing service credit. And so I've been trying to decide whether I would try to walk through a long example of kind of where this came from and where the issue happened. So I'm gonna try to do that, and I hope it is at least kind of clear. So where it originated from was having a member who's out on non-duty disability leave. They eventually, at the end of that leave, decide they're going to retire. That they're not able to return to work, and they're going to go ahead and they're eligible to retire. They're going to retire. We had a member who, when that occurred, did not get the service credit for the time they were out on non-duty disability leave, and they had annual leave, sick leave, taken whatever kind of paid leave during that time. And there was confusion about why that didn't count, why they didn't get service credit for that, why it didn't count as basic salary. And so what we found was that they had I guess it's pretty common among left members. I know it's pretty common among left members to have in their collective bargaining agreements buyback programs. So the member had I forget what you guys called exactly, but a private insurance payments that they were receiving, and they take those private insurance payments, hand them off to their employer, and then the employer backs out their paid leave they took and they return that to the member. And so the paid leave would have counted for service credit and basic salary, but it was removed from the system when they bought it back. And so typically, a member would still be able to get that service credit time through what's called authorized leave of absence purchase service credit, unless they retire instead of returning to work. So the way DRS has interpreted the current law is that the member would need to return to work, and then they could use the authorized leave of absence purchase service credit, but if they retire, they cannot. So that was the long journey we took to get to the underlying issue. So the current law, the authorized leave of absence purchase service credit, like I alluded to earlier, DRS has interpreted the current law as requiring a member to return to work. It doesn't explicitly say that in the law. I'm not going to read the whole quotation here, but this is just, and this isn't just a left to benefit. It also applies to the other pension systems. But here we get to where the DRS rule is and why they've made this. Since you have to return to work, but when the law gets down to how DRS determines the bill to the member, how much they need to charge the member to get that benefit, that it takes their salary from the time they left to their salary when they resume employment. And so since someone retires, they never resume employment. That's where DRS interpreted this as requiring the member to return to work. And I will add on that one, we did reach out to DRS to ask whether it could be something that could be fixed through rulemaking, whether we could come up with another, for a solution for those members who retire instead of returning work, as some way to determine what their salary would have been, to ensure that they, make a full payment into the system. But they didn't believe they could do that. They said they would support a change in the law, but that they didn't feel they had the authority to do that under existing law. Okay, I did also want to touch on annuity options at retirement, because this can get real confusing with the different types of purchase service credit. And so for those members I described earlier who are out on authorized leave of absence purchase service credit, they retire, so they're out on authorized leave of absence. They retire immediately after that. They cannot do the authorized leave of absence purchase service credit. They can still do purchase service credit or purchase of additional annuity at retirement, and that would help them make up for that time period. However, they have to pay the full actuarial cost, where the ALOA purchase service credit benefit is slightly subsidized. They pay the member contributions, the employer contributions, and they pay interest. But that's still not, that is less than the full actuarial cost. And then the other big difference is that these benefits, while we call it purchase service credit, it's not real service credit. It doesn't count towards benefits such as early retirement or the benefit enhancement, the tiered multiplier or lump sum benefit. It's what's sometimes referred to as airtime instead. So it's not quite an equivalent, but it is still an option for members in that situation to make up some of that service credit, at least in terms of their overall pension benefit. So the policy option from the board today, really just one option, to clarify the existing law to allow for members who retire instead of returning to work to be eligible for ALOA purchase service credit. The pros with this is that it would resolve an issue for members who were unable to receive service credit due to this unintended confluence of the definition of basic salary, the buyback programs, and the interpretation of the purchase service credit law. And then also a pro is, I'll touch on this more, but the cost is not expected to impact the plan rates. Possible cons on this are that it is a bit of an indeterminate cost to the plan because member does not pay the full actuarial value of the service credit, and we don't have like an exact number of how many members this would impact. I shouldn't have used the term indeterminate cost because that's a loaded term that the actuaries would use in their fiscal notes and in their analysis. They did not use indeterminate cost, but there would be some cost to the plan. Yeah.
So Jacob, when we're talking about indeterminate cost, and that's whatever word you want to use, the amount of the money that we're talking about, it's got to be de minimis compared to the overall.
Yes, and that was the actuarial analysis of it, was that it would not be enough to raise rates. There would be some cost, But
So
yeah.
the con is like a very small con.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Jacob, another question for you.
Yeah.
The individuals, in most cases, the way I understand it, if they're on that supplemental insurance, usually there is a period of time, and maybe our employer reps can help us out, but I think it's no 6 months maximum. Is that kind of what you understand as well? I mean, because I'm trying to figure out what the exposure is. I mean, we're not talking years on authorized leave of absence. It's usually a period of time because the insurance companies don't have a long drawn out process. They try to keep it short as well.
Yeah, I don't have any specifics on the limitations of that, but I know the assumption was in working with the actuaries that it would be a small number of months we're talking about, that someone would, typically be out on non-duty disability and have the leave and be able to afford to be in that, that situation for long. Okay, so I did just want to touch on this. So in the bill draft, so I did a bill draft for that option. I shared that with the actuaries and with Department of Retirement Systems, which is our normal process to get feedback and get their analysis. So on that, like I pointed out earlier, for DRS had interpreted that way because interpreted it for the member to have to return to work because of how the cost part was done. So here's just the language in the bill draft, which is included in your documents of how DRS would go about billing the member, that they would need to work with the employer to identify what the person's salary would have been if they continued to work. Already touched on the actuarial analysis that they did of pricing, included that in your materials. And then with Department of Retirement Systems, I shared that bill draft with them, worked together on that paragraph that I showed you a couple slides back on how they would determine the cost. And no other administrative concerns were identified. And they did tell us that they would support additional clarification and language of the bill draft. So the action in front of the board today is option 1 would be to endorse bill to allow members who retire instead of returning to work to be eligible for ALOA purchase service credit. And then option 2 would be no action at this time. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Are there questions for Jacob? Comments? Discussion on board action? Direction?
So, Mr. Chair, this is Mark Johnston.
Mark, go ahead, bud.
So I would move to endorse option number 1. It seems to me that if the actuaries are good with this, it's not going to impact rates. And if DRS has no objection to it, we would be disadvantaging members by not supporting this and trying to get it supported through the legislature.
Thank you, Mark. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Motion's been made and second and thirded, yes. Discussion on the motion. Seeing or hearing nobody raising their hands. All in favor of board action number 1 to endorse the bill and to move it forward, say aye.
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 Those opposed? Those opposed? All right, adopted. Thank you very much, Jacob.
Thank you.
Item number 3 on our agenda is the standby pay. It's a comprehensive report. And again, Jacob, you're there. Steve, you got anything before he moves on?
This one was added to your, you added this to your interim work plan earlier this year. You've had a couple of presentations on it, having to do with some of the challenges about gathering data for the pricing, which Jacob will talk a little bit about, and also where standby pay is already considered salary in other plans. With that, Jacob, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah. Okay. Once again, for the record, Jacob White, staff to the board. This issue is much easier to explain. Hope I'm not setting myself up for failure there. Yeah. So standby pay is not considered basic salary for LEOFF 2 members, while it is for PERS and PSERS members. did have some legislative history for you there, but mostly just wanted to point out that it was added to PERS in 1994. And then the board has previously studied this in 2016 and 2018, but both those years it was just an initial presentation. So there was never any work done to identify the cost. So who typically earns standby pay? Both firefighters and law enforcement officers. When I initially began working on this, I did not believe that law enforcement officers, that it was as common with them. But some of the data I got back, as I'll touch on later, showed that at least for some law enforcement officers, they actually earn much more in standby pay than firefighters, at least for a couple employers. So just the importance of basic salary. So basic salary, when something is considered basic salary, then it goes to reportable compensation, which then impacts a member's final average salary. Generally, basic salary is defined as salaries and wages payable for services rendered. And then within the laws for the different pension plans, there are other payments that are identified that don't fit under that general definition. And that's where basic salary is included for the other plans, but not for LEOFF 2. And then standby conditions, I talked about this last time. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. What standby pay actually is for. There's the requirements usually to not be impaired. It's less than full pay, although the pay amount differs from employer to employer, how they determine that. And just really that someone's prepared to come into work if needed. So typically the standby pay, it's not standardized. It's different from employer to employer. Had a few examples that had previously, so when I mentioned that the board had studied this prior to this year, this was information gathered at that time. I think it was Paul Neal had reached out to different employers and gathered some examples from their CBAs of the different types of standby pay. Okay, so I've been trying to gather data for this this interim, and there's no single source of data identifying the different types of pay for LEOFF employers or PERS or any other pension plans employers. And so I had to do public records requests throughout the state, and so I tried to just do a random sampling of public records requests. And then I've been working to provide that data to the actuaries as I receive it. And a lot of that data that's come in is not usable. And so it's been kind of back and forth with employers to try to get usable data and to try having it standardized. So requested it for fiscal year 2023. And as of the time that I was able to provide that to the actuaries for them to have time to provide a pricing for this meeting, this was all of the usable data I'd been able to get. This came to about 10% of LEOFF 2 members, so a pretty small sampling. And then you can see I really just heard back from 2 employers who pay standby pay. So I got some who do not pay it, and then Tacoma and Spokane do pay standby pay for both police and fire. And I did double check with Spokane because that average standby pay amount was so much more. Although Tacoma also was significantly more for police than fire, and they did confirm that the data was correct, that it was for standby pay as it's defined in their CBAs. So did just want to also say, so since producing this information, I have heard back from one other employer, from Vancouver Police Department. And then I've got about 5 other employers that I'm in communication with currently that are hoping to have data to me in the coming weeks. So based off that limited data, the actuaries, instead of providing kind of a normal pricing that they would do where they identify the expected cost, instead they gave us a high and low estimate. And so the high estimate was 4 basis points. The low estimate was 0 basis points, so no impact on the rate. I guess here's where I could touch on if the board did move forward with this issue, the way the actuaries would handle this would be I would continue to provide them the data I receive, And during session, they would provide an updated fiscal note that would hopefully be, ideally, they'd be able to identify a more accurate cost instead of giving a high-low estimate. But it would still be a work in progress in trying to get them as much data as possible before they do an actuarial fiscal note for the legislature. Also shared this with DRS. They had no administrative concerns. So I did a bill draft also, and the bill draft's in your materials. And the bill draft, I just took the exact standby language from PERS and PSERS and put that into LEOFF. So the policy options in front of the board today, option 1 would be to add standby pay to the definition of basic salary. The pros would be it aligns LEOFF 2 with the other state pension plans. Cons would be there would be an increased cost to the plan. And then the other con being the data that I had available as of now is a small sampling and may not identify the the true cost of this benefit. Option 2 would be for the board to direct staff to continue to gather additional data and then report to the board next interim, hopefully with a more accurate pricing analysis. A con of that would be that LEOFF 2 members would continue to not have standby considered basic salary like the other plans do. And so possible, I think Jason's got his hand raised.
Oh, you can go ahead and finish.
Okay. So possible board action today, option 1 would be a motion to endorse a bill adding standby pay to basic salary. Option 2 would be to motion to direct staff to continue to work on gathering data to better identify the cost and provide an updated presentation next interim. And then option 3 would be to take no action today. So that completes my presentation. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Jason, what was your question?
I didn't have a question. I wanted to make a motion.
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion for option number 2, so we can get more accurate information to figure out what else is out there before we make a decision.
I'll second.
Okay. Moving and second. Any discussion? I'll just state from what I know from Tacoma Fire is that the information that you get, I'm not sure. I think the data there needs to be more additional data put forward, because I was always under the impression the way that Tacoma Fire had it set up for standby pay, it was worked into their basic salary, and that's the way it went to DRS. But I'm not sure if that's true or not, and if this is one of those things that we need to ferret out some of that stuff before we move forward and get caught into a grinder with the legislature. So I support the motion. So the motion is option 2, Chair.
Okay. So on the motion for number 2, direct staff to gather additional data and report to board for next interim. Seeing or hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Option 2 is adopted. Thanks, Jacob.
Thank you.
Item number 4 on our agenda is the salary setting authority implementation. And this is, I think Karen's coming forward. So,
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Karen's been working with the board on implementing the bill from last session, and you guys took some action towards implementing that bill at the November meeting. And then here to provide some a follow-up to your November action is Karen. And with that, Karen, I'll kind of turn it over to you to let the board know what the next steps are.
Thank you. For the record, Karen Durant, staff to the board. As an update, an email was sent from OFM to the chair in an unmonitored email box the afternoon of November 19th, the day before the November meeting. The mail was resent with CCs to LEOFF staff on Monday, November 25th. That was the first time the message was seen. A copy of this email and initial response from Chair Lawson is included in your materials. In summary, there were concerns about the structure creating inequities across the executive branch in alignment with positions under the salary setting authority of OFM. Mainly concerns over organization size and comparing to Washington Management Service and current range structures. Concerns were from OFM's statewide HR administrative perspective. There was no reference to the unique nature of the positions or the alignment with other salary structures outside of OFM state HR authority, such as the legislature or OFM positions. This is a reminder of what the board adopted at the November meeting. You adopted the salary structure and increases for the deputy and research policy positions. The increases were adopted through the end of the biennium, 6/30/2025. Additional expenditure authority projections were sent to OFM for possible inclusion in the governor's budget proposal. As you may know, the budget was released yesterday, and full funding was included for the adopted increase in the maintenance level budget for LEOFF. There was also a reminder that there was no adjustment adopted to the executive director's salary because focus was on the implementation of the board's legislation 6197. This is a good time to also just kind of interject pieces that were included in the budget. Besides the salary funding piece, the budget also included funding for general wage increases of 3% and 2% effective July of each year. The lease renewal funding was accidentally omitted from the budget, but OFM will submit this as an errata item to the legislature. We are this close to getting a fully executed new lease. So we're hoping by the end of the year. So I wanted to just update you. So that's timely information. In accordance with the salary setting processes the board adopted last month, these are the upcoming next steps. Performance evaluations will be completed for 2024 by the end of 2025. Items that will be on the board's work plan for next year. The June meeting, the board will review the existing market data conducted in 2024. Reminder, the next market study will be conducted in April, May of 2026. OFM consultation could take place during this time or sooner since there are no changes to the market data. The board has already received the feedback from OFM pertaining to the structure. In July, the board will adopt any salary changes. Important to note that a supplemental budget request for the executive director's salary must be completed in 2025 in order to have funding for recruitment beyond the current salary level. If there are specific goals that you would like captured in the expectations for 2025, please share those as soon as possible. We're in the planning phases for that. You can reach out to me with any ideas. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Karen, I have just one on the executive director. When we start that conversation, what is the time frame that would have to be submitted for? I know you said 25 for 26, but what's that time frame?
So what we would do is we're actually a little behind the time to be doing this well. But at the July meeting, you would do the decision. We wanted to align the timing with the budget process since we were a little awkward this time. So July would be the adoption of changes. August, we'd write decision packages. September, we submit to OFM, and they would go through the budget process December notification and then the legislature.
Would we start our conversation in May or June then?
Yes. So June, we review the market data. If you guys wanted to act sooner, we could, but the funding mechanism for that is still based on
The old
the
data.
budget funding cycle.
Okay.
And I suppose just like these increases, if we anticipated having surplus, there could be actions sooner. Readjustment of some resources from other objects of expenditure to account for a salary difference there. Any other questions?
Questions? Seeing any?
Okay,
Thank you for that.
you're welcome.
Karen will be going over all of this with you. This will become a regular part now of your interim work plans in the future. And we'll also get this process written up so that it's included in the training materials for all new board members as soon as they're onboarded, so that they're also familiar with what the process will be. And again, now that I'll still be doing the evaluations for the 3 employees, but you'll be setting their salaries. So to the extent, this is what Karen's talking about, if there's goals that you would like to see them accomplish in 2025, so that when you're reviewing their evaluations in January of 2026 for potential salary improvements, if there's something that you want to see from them, now's the time to let us know so that we can get that into their 2025 work plans. So as soon as you got something, or if you've got questions, Karen is your point person. All right. This one is kind of also emerging at the same time. You guys were discussing the implementation of the bill. The governor issued a freeze directive. And so Karen's here to tell you a little bit about what was and was not in that directive and how that may impact the board in the upcoming year. With that, Karen, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. For the record, Karen Durant, board to the staff. Board to the staff, staff to the board. Let's imagine also that this is all laminated.
Yeah.
We need a little bit of that. So shortly after our last meeting, on December 2nd, the governor issued a freeze directive that applies to cabinet agencies. A copy of the directive is included in your board material. Non-cabinet agencies, higher education board and commissions are encouraged to participate in the restrictions. This is in response to the state facing significant operating budget deficit, and the freeze is intended to capture immediate savings through spending reductions. The freeze applies to the following: hiring, not related to public safety or other non-discretionary activities, non-essential contracts, and discretionary purchasing of goods and services, and finally, travel. Exempt from the freeze is hiring to fill vacancies in critical areas. Also, services, contracts, goods and equipment purchases, and travel that are necessary to continue critical services or agency operations are exempt from the freeze. In general, the freeze provisions for contracts and purchasing of goods do not apply if it's less than $10,000 necessary to protect life or public safety and relate to federal funding sources or revenue collection. Travel is an important part of LEOFF. It's essential to you receiving the education necessary to perform your fiduciary responsibilities. Travel necessary to continue critical services or agency operations are exempt from the freeze. Important to note that advice and guidance from OFM is continuing to evolve almost daily, mainly related to the hiring freeze. A lot of agencies were caught with partial recruitment And so they're issuing new advice and guidance almost daily. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? I do want to thank you for pointing out the travel, because I do think that's important as we move forward. And I know you mentioned the board piece of it, but I would assume that's all the team as well.
Yes,
Thank you.
as long as it's considered essential to the position's role.
Yeah, so for instance, for the team, all of the travel to attend stakeholder stuff, that's in their job descriptions. So having people, at the stakeholder events to answer the member questions, that's 100% covered. The travel for staff training is one of those ones where that has been questioned in the past. Some of it depends on kind of if you're a very experienced employee already, how much additional training do you need? And that's, I mean, in order to maintain whether it's professional certifications or to remain a top tier employee, you do have to stay on top of new changes in the pension market, for instance. But that's one where, as Karen mentioned, that the agencies like the board are not cabinet agencies. So you're asked to participate in this. And that may be one of the things next year is in terms of travel for education for team members. That may be something I'll be talking about with the admin committee to find out where you feel the line is appropriate there. But as far as trustee travel, as Karen mentioned, your fiduciary education is essential to your responsibilities. And so I don't believe that fiduciary travel is affected at all. That's my personal opinion.
Are there other comments or questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this is Mark Johnson again.
Good, Mark.
So what I'm picking up is that none of these freezes apply to us, and if it would be discretionary for the trustees to make any decisions on those issues. Is that correct?
I think, go ahead.
I think that's fair to say, yes.
Okay. No. Thank you.
I think we're going to have to do our due diligence to make sure that we fall within the rules as they've been laid out. It will require conversations to take place probably outside of our group to make sure we're following it. But I want to make sure that when we're talking about our team, I think they are essential to our success. And I think we want to make sure that they have the resources to continue to provide quality product. And as a board, I'd like to see us, if we have questions, we have talked about goals, objectives for our team members as far as what we want them to accomplish. And it may not be provided in a job description, but there is an expectation from this board that they continue good work. And if we need to provide documentation and requests to justify them doing or attending a conference, I think we would probably need to do so. I stand behind our team 100%.
I also just want to
I
mention,
agree with you, Chair. That's an eminently reasonable position. We have to be able to justify what we're doing, how we're doing it, why we're doing it. And I think that's reasonable. And the other comment I would make is that this is another one of those issues that we're not funded by the general revenue from the state. It's sort of our money, but we have to be responsible. And we would be responsible by making sure that OFM, for example, or the governor's office, or anybody else who's looking at us knows that what we're doing and why we're doing it, and that it's a reasonable expense.
just one more comment. For those of us that this ties into kind of the travel as well as the salaries, for those of us who were at the NC PERS or the IFEBP conference, a theme throughout a lot of those presentations was that board needed to have salary setting authority over staff and the ability to set those salaries and adjust because of the specific nature. And so that kind of segues to both of these topics about the essential training, travel, as well as you guys setting salaries for execution of fiduciary responsibilities.
Any other comments or questions for Karen? Not seeing any. Thank you, Karen. All right. Number 6 on our agenda is the public comment procedure, and Tor's going to go over that. And for whatever crazy reason, Tor, they had down 3 minutes or less. So I don't know what you plan to do, but I'm just going to hold you to it then, I guess, right? I'm just teasing you. Just to start the.
So, yes, as you'll recall, there was a presentation, your annual trustee training that was provided earlier by the AG's office, included an overview of the Open Public Meetings Act. And Tor wanted to talk with you about how the board's current procedures, processes related to public comment apply with that act. So with that, Tor, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. So this is really a little bit of a deeper dive, as staff sometimes characterizes it. You may recall back in 2022, when the legislature made some changes to the Open Public Meetings Act, I provided an initial training that year where I raised a lot of new questions because there was some uncertainty with regard to how some of these things would shake out. Then last year in 2023, we had Morgan Damerow with our office, who is sort of the designated expert in these areas, highlight some of the new areas and which way we were sort of leaning, if you will. And at this point, I think we're in a position at the AG's office to help you define the gold standard. There is absolutely, by way of just further clarification, I'd say that there's absolutely no doubt that staff and the board is compliant with the Open Public Meetings Act as it stands today. And the fact that public comment is sometimes, or the invitation for public comment is sometimes later on the agenda, as it is in today's agenda as item number 10, is not necessarily problematic. And I'll just say that because the new requirement, which you'll find on the next, in the statute, is that did come in 2022, was that the governing body of a public agency shall provide an opportunity at or before every regular meeting at which final action is taken for public comment. The board invites public comment or actions before final action. In essence, these items that you had on the agenda today, the authorized leave of absence, the standby pay, are presented over the course of multiple meetings, right? And I've never, in my experience now, 9 years with the board, I don't think I've ever seen something come up for final action on the first day that it's placed on the agenda. So both from a invitation to comment perspective, there's wonderful notice to the public regarding board actions, and it's a process. It's not an event, right? So for that reason, I have no concerns there. And I'll also just add that you invite written testimony, which is also an option. It's not required, or written testimony or written public comment. And that's clearly set forth on the website, the procedures for how to do so, right? And that to the extent that you have received written comment, it has been distributed to the board. And that is, in essence, the requirement. And the chair, sometimes at my urging, puts it on the record that it was so distributed. So that I do appreciate. My only suggestion or comment, and this is where I'm going to start the clock for the 3 minutes here, okay, is that in light of in 2022, when the legislator did make these changes as a result of the technological advancements which had occurred during COVID, and the fact that, you know, really it opened them up to a whole new level of participation, there was a specific finding, and that was that the people participating in government, especially through public comment, is an essential part of developing public policy. And that was new. And I highlighted that in 2022, and it came up again in 2023. And I guess I'd just like to suggest that what has evolved in other boards and commissions, and specifically, I'll say Fish and Wildlife, I'll say the University of Washington Regents, I'll say the Washington State Investment Board, it has moved towards this consistent standard of having public comment first on the agenda, because that way there's no uncertainty regarding did you or did you not have the opportunity before final action was taken. And as I said, I'm not, so far so good. I would just urge you to consider taking that one very minor step to align your practices with really what I consider to be or the AG's office, I should say, considers to be the gold standard. And with that, I think the 3 minutes are over. Thank you.
Are there questions for Tor? Go ahead, Pat.
Tori, have you noticed or have you seen that there are some new changes going to the Open Meetings Act again for this session, such as it might be, I'm not sure where it's coming from, but we got a notice from the Washington State fire commissioners that they want to start adding language such as promptly getting the information back out to any type of request. Have you seen that at all?
I haven't seen it yet. I will go make inquiries now and report back. So.
Yeah, because to me, that's one of those things that I'd like to see what a definition of promptly is. And as we know, coming from the side that has people that are always asking for information, and if you don't meet the deadline, there's a penalty for every day that you don't meet that deadline. And there are people that are making their living on filing those type of notices.
Okay. I appreciate the clarification, because we're now talking public records request. Then is that with respect to the promptly? Is that right?
It's in the Open Meetings Act.
Oh, okay.
It is.
Okay.
You'll see it if you go to the fire commissioners, state fire commissioners.
Okay.
Roger Ferris put it out.
I will follow up and report back.
Thanks, Tor.
Thank you.
Jay?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For what it's worth, I'll just offer that, the Olympia City Council made this change some time ago to move public comment to begin the meeting for the very reasons that Tor has expressed here. Is we actually got feedback from our community members that it's difficult at times to have public comment come after actions taken. And then there's no real good or easy way for council to go backwards at that point in time and undo an action. So I think it does make good sense. I think a lot of boards and commissions, I think a lot of cities are going this direction because of the new direction that's provided through OPMA. So, I would be in favor of moving public comment to the front half of the meeting.
Thank you. Other comments? Did have a question for Tor. Under the screen you have in front of us, it says at or before every regular meeting. If we were to call a special meeting, we would convene still as a board. Does that require public comment if we're going to take action? Or
which final action is taken? There are let's put it this way. It's yes, the definition, I believe this definition of, if we move, I don't have it here on this slide, but yes, you would need to find a way to do that. Okay. That's what it boils down. And except for emergency meetings, right? But I have a hard time envisioning
us.
Exactly. Taking an emergency action. And in which case that requirement is basically doesn't exist. So, but yeah, there's some definitional sort of give and take here, but yes, you would be required to provide an opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Other comments or questions? So for us what is the procedure? If we want to make this change, because I follow in line with Jay.
There's two things to consider. Right now, all of your public comment is received in writing. And so to the extent that there is public comment received about any item that's on the agenda, we provide that to you at the time that issue is being discussed on the agenda. So we don't wait until the end of the meeting after you've already acted. The situation that you're talking about where the public comment is received after you've already taken action, under our current procedures where you're only taking the written, can't happen. To the extent that you expand your opportunities for public comment to allow people to join the meeting online and provide testimony online or in person like they do at the city council, then you have no idea what they're going to say or what they're going to want to talk about. So if you'd made that change, then I think there would be a very real business reason to move it up. At this point in time, it's kind of up to you whether or not you're comfortable continuing to receive any written feedback before you take action on an item, even if the public comment piece is technically at the end of the agenda. We to kind of give it to you out of order right now, if you will. So that's how things work now,
So
Mr. Chair.
on our agendas, number 9 has public comment. And Tor, what although we're meeting, I guess, the rule, what you're suggesting as the gold, standard would be to move this forward, have public comment, following our minutes, probably the adoption of our minutes. And then that would be just saying that we received public comment on the following items and they're written and they're distributed to the board. That suffices? Or do we, at that point, like Steve had mentioned, do we open it up for public comment?
I don't, as I indicated at the beginning, Mr. Chair, I'm completely comfortable that the board's and staff's current procedures are compliant with it's just as I said, the legislative finding was that there was greater opportunities, greater channels, and to expand the role of the public and to give them more avenues, right? And ultimately today, they have the opportunity to do so through written testimony, and by virtue of the fact that your decision-making process is usually a multi-step process, there is no doubt in my mind that somebody who wanted to submit to even present orally would have the opportunity to do so before a final action is taken, the way the board has operated here previously. But all I'm suggesting is really from an appearances perspective and from just giving that future proofing, if you will, and that's just that little, let's say a member wakes up one morning and says, oh my God, that's on the agenda and missed it the last time around, that they can walk in and have the opportunity to make themselves, to feel heard and to make themselves heard prior to an action is, as I said, I think it's just one more incremental step that you could take. And I'll also just say that the other reason perhaps to take it is just for appearances, to be honest. Because when Mr. Damerel was here, my colleague, the first thing he noticed was, look, it's at the end. And I said, oh, no, but let me tell you about how we do things, right? This is why it's okay. But to a casual observer, okay, they might not understand how fulsome our process is, okay, or your process is. I don't want to take responsibility for your great work.
Jay, go ahead.
No, I just want to really appreciate what Steve said, and we do get, just so everyone knows, we do get really good briefings, and we are made aware of all public comments before we take action, and I think we have good process for that. But I do agree with the appearance sake. I think from appearance perspective, I think having it up front just sends a different message in terms of how we do that.
Yeah, if the board is interested, we could put this on your work plan for next interim and bring you back different options, whether that's different options for written testimony or options for verbal testimony, and kind of walk you through the pros and cons and what that would take, technology wise or something like that. Making a change on the agenda is easy. But there's, some of the stuff that Tor's talking about today in terms of like the opportunity for people to testify in person. Those would be things we need to work out a little bit more administratively, both with our team and with the SIB, as long as we're using their boardroom.
In person online, right?
Yeah. If, for instance, if that's it, then what technology changes or process changes would it take for that, and so forth. So if you're interested in exploring this further, we could certainly do that for you. Put that on your work plan.
I guess without objection, I think we'd like to see that.
Great.
Thanks, Tor.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate
Happy holidays.
it. To you as well. All right, number 7 on our agenda is the Ombuds Program Review, and is it gonna be Tammy?
Yeah, during your interim work plan discussions earlier this year, there was some interest expressed by board members in getting a presentation about what the Ombudsman program does. And Tammy gives that presentation to stakeholder groups all the time. So you're going to get kind of that presentation plus a little bit extra today. And with that, Tammy, I'll turn it over to you.
Here we go. Thank you. I am Tammy Sadler, the lead ombudsman for the LEOFF 2 Ombudsman Program. Thank you for having me here today. I am really grateful to be here and give you a little insight into the world of ombudsing. And so today I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the program to provide you some awareness and some background information, what it means to be an ombudsman, what visitors can expect when they come to, when they contact us. And then I'm going to provide you with a little bit of data. This first slide here, also I want to let you know that I appreciate interaction. So if you want to interrupt me at any point during this presentation, please feel free to do so, okay? I welcome questions. So the LEOFF 2 Ombudsman Program has been designed to provide our members with death and disability consultation. And we do that in a very personal way. We learn about our members, who they are, what their situation is, and we provide very specific options and information tailored to their customized and tailored to their needs. And then we will work with outside agencies on their behalf, if that's appropriate, to their circumstances, to help them through any conflict or misunderstandings that there might be. So that kind of wraps up the first 2 bullets there that are the most visible part of the work that we do. In addition to that, we maintain a network of federal, state, and local benefits or benefits and resources so that we are kept aware of what's out there. We identify roadblocks and systemic issues as they arise so that we know what's going on with our members, and we can make recommendations for changes to policies, procedures, and practices for not only for all agencies and all parties involved. And then, of course, we conduct educational presentations to our employers and stakeholder groups so that they are aware of what we do and they can refer members to us. And that's what Steve was talking about, the more informal discussion that I have with our stakeholders and our employers regarding the work that we do. So for a little bit of background information, the ombudsman position was established in 2013 through a budget bill. I was hired as the first ombudsman in June of 2014, and I practiced as a sole ombudsman for 7 years. During that time, I worked to establish process procedures. I learned what an ombudsman was, and started serving members in whatever capacity I could based on my current learning at the time. As the program grew, we decided that there was a need arose for a part-time ombudsman. So in July of 2021, you might remember that Sarah White came on board with the program and worked for us part-time. And when she left, that position was converted to a full-time position and Jessica Burkhart was hired into that role. The program is continuing to grow and mature, and the needs of a growing and maturing program require us to take what we've developed informally and create a more formalized structure, system, and practices. And so for that, we first started when Jessica came on board. We first started with a official training program for the program. As you can imagine, the information that we need to keep in our brains is very vast and complex. There's a very long learning cycle for doing this kind of work, and so we developed a 3-phase training program with a basic, intermediate, and advanced levels. Let me scroll here a little bit. Steve and I are currently in the process of establishing a charter for the program. This will help define and differentiate the roles and responsibilities between the Ombudsman program and the board administration, and it'll ensure sustainability of the program no matter who is in this position moving forward. And then today, we are establishing some accountability with the board by establishing this reporting process. And I'm looking forward to giving these reports to you guys annually. So a little bit, does anybody have any questions so far? Yeah. So to start the brief overview, I'll let you know that we belong to and participate in 3 professional ombudsman organizations, and they follow these international standards of practice. They're confidentiality, neutrality, independence, and informality. Confidentiality is really, really important. It's my #1 priority, the privacy of our members. And we maintain a really strict practice of in the way that we communicate with our members, in the way that we maintain our notes, and we record data to protect their privacy. For neutrality, I want it to be really clear with everybody involved that the ombuds is a neutral third party in conflicts, and that we advocate for fair practices and not for individual outcomes. For independence, it's important. We were just talking about the appearance of the board with the public comments, and it's the same thing with the independence of the Ombudsman's office in maintaining its independence in appearance, its purpose, its practice, and its decision-making to avoid outside influences and maintain our neutrality. Informally, we are an off-the-record resource. We do not adjudicate any issues or involve ourselves in any formal processes. We provide information, options, and we address conflicts informally with all parties. So for what our visitors can expect, I gave you some kind of plain bullet points here, but I wanted to kind of run you through what somebody might expect if they came to us from the beginning of their injury to a potential retirement because of the injury. And so if you don't mind indulging me for just a few minutes. So if somebody comes to us and let's say they were hurt last week on the job and they don't know what to do, and their union rep said, hey, you know what, I think you should call the Ombudsman's office. This is kind of what what they can expect when they come to us. We will meet with them. We will interview them to, like I said, get to know them, get to know their family situation, get to know, what their medical condition is and what their doctors think about that, and all kinds of stuff we talk to them about. And we answer any questions that they might have. And then we would encourage them to start a labor and industries claim. And the reason that we do that is because that's the first step in the process. When you have an on-the-job disability, you want to get a claim started. So we'll encourage them to get a claim. We'll talk them through how to do that, when to do that, what to expect through the process. And then we'll give them maybe some trigger points to check back with us on. So they'll want to check back with us if they are told that they need to get, for example, an independent medical examination so that we can review with them what their rights and responsibilities are. We can tell them how that works, what to expect, sort of thing. If they're getting any a delay or a denial in their treatment that their doctors have recommended, we ask that they check in with us. Or if their doctor gives them any indication that they will not be able to return to work, or if their employer gives them any indication that they're thinking about separating them from employment. These are all reasons that they might want to check back with us. And so we'll have multiple conversations with members throughout their L&I claim. If a member has reached maximum medical improvement and they're nervous about the closing process, we will have another conversation about the vocational assessment, the re-education options, partial permanent disability payouts, settlement options, L&I pension process if they are eligible for a pension. And then if they are being separated from their work due to their disability, either from their doctor or their employer, we will take them through the steps of retiring from LEOFF 2. And we'll talk to them about how and what to negotiate with their employment upon separation and what to expect from that process, what to do with their leave balances and the potential options there, what to expect for their post-retirement medical and how to compare plans on the open market. We'll talk about how to use their MERPs and their VBAs to supplement their medical, whatever medical options they've chosen. We'll talk about the long-term disability process, the timing of that, and how it impacts their other benefits, along with Social Security process timing and offsets. If at any time they are denied benefits or they have any questions, they're also free to contact us anytime during the process. Should a member be terminally ill, we will also work with them to do some survivor planning. Oftentimes we'll get members saying, I know I don't have much time left, and so I want to make sure my family's taken care of. And so we'll walk them through survivor planning. And then, of course, if there's been a line of duty death, we will work with either the employer, the union rep, family liaison, the survivors themselves, whoever it is that contacts us to help walk them through whatever local, state, and federal benefits they may be eligible for as well. That was a lot. Do you guys have any questions about any of that? No? All right. You guys are easy crowd. So we're going to give you a little bit of data here. The first, I separated into two different categories for the data. One is basically caseload data, and then the other is more who we serve sort of data. So caseload data and I separated out for fiscal year to be consistent with how other ombudsman's agencies and other agencies give you their reports. So for the fiscal year running July 23 to June of this year, we worked on 138 new cases, and we worked those cases 264 times. So that's what I'm talking about in the multiple touches that we might have with the same case, and that's what that work number is. probably you guys can read the slide, but probably the most significant things to point out here are the 69 duty disability process cases and 26 L&I process cases that we help people through, along with 43 of those being presumptive from the presumptive laws. You'll note here that there was 83 firefighters to 41 law enforcement officers. So about 50% of our, it's about 50% less for law enforcement officers. And then the 14 other are like union representatives or a family member or an employer that might have called and needed some help with something. Most of the members that we work with are active members, but we do work with a significant amount of retired members as well. We just recently started to keep data on the separated category, so that number may be a little bit low for this time around. Average age of the members that we serve are 52 with 22 service credit years.
Tammy, what's your definition for separated? What do you look at?
So that means that they're separated from employment, but they have not started drawing their pension yet. They're not retired. So some of our members choose not to retire from the pension system because they're going into another career or they have various reasons. Mark, did you have a question?
No.
All right. Then I just wanted to give you a little bit of information about what we've been up to. So you can see here on this slide, Jessica and I have had a significant amount of professional development, staying on top of the ombuds world is really important. And of course, Jessica is fairly new in her position. So there's a lot of training that we sent her to get her up to speed. And then for outreach events, we attended 5 outreach events this year. And I think we have 6 on the schedule for next year. Which is very exciting to me. I love going out to these events and talking to our members and sharing what we do. We get a lot of referrals from them. Keeping people apprised on what we do is really important to the program. And then, of course, we provided support for 2 informational videos. Every year we send out tuition waiver letters to those people who are eligible for tuition waivers, just to keep them aware of this in case they have any students that are getting ready to go to college. And then we updated our promotional materials. In closing, I would just like to share with you that over the past 12 years, this has been a really well-received program. I get kind of embarrassed sometimes with all the thank yous that I get because I feel like I'm just doing my job, but I absolutely love it. This program, working with death and disability benefits, is really complex for not just our members to navigate, but for me to help walk people through. And I feel like we've really been serving our members really well, and this program has been growing and maturing, and I look forward to continuing to set up the ongoing success of the program. Do you have any questions?
I just want to thank you and Jessica. Before we actually put this, and I think we all recognize we had a void, a clear void with our local leadership, our group organizations trying to figure out how to answer questions. And what you have provided, the 2 of you now, have provided continuity, which is extremely important. When they try to get an answer, they're not going from one place to another. Also, having this group in place takes away from people like Pat and myself who would make up answers, right, Pat? Just kidding, just
Oh,
kidding.
you threw
Yeah,
yourself in there just to
I-
make it sound good.
I
I know
know.
what you're doing.
I think that to me, it's critical. And I've received nothing but positives related to the work that you're doing. It is good stuff. Difficult situations at times, very emotional, and you have been really just rock stars for what you do. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Other comments, questions?
Just one other thing, Tammy, and I think you know, is that one of the things of doing this, you learn that sometimes the full story is not told to you in the beginning, and you have to ferret out what is true and what's not. And I think that has gone a long ways in helping people, the members, know exactly how to navigate through the waters of the retirement and also disabilities, more disabilities than anything else, because some guys think, well, we just heard a case, or the leave of absence thing where everybody thought, well, I'll just get my money back and I'll have service credit, and all of a sudden you don't have it. So, and that's the same thing with this. So Jessica, Tammy, both you people are doing a great job. I can't thank you enough for what you do for the members.
Jay.
And for us.
Sorry. I got Jay, then AJ.
Yeah, I'm just going to join the appreciation train that's here and just
Sorry.
really great work and just how you've embraced it and getting out to the events and just all the outreach to make yourself available. There's a lot of ways you can do ombudsman work, and being proactive about it is the best way. And I see you guys doing that. So I just want to express my appreciation.
AJ?
Yeah, I just kind of echo everyone else's statements. I send people to you all the time, and they have nothing but great things to say. Also, it's nice to know that, if something were to happen to me, that there's somebody there to take care of everything for my wife and kids. So I appreciate you guys.
I got your back. Thank you.
Representative.
Thank you, Tammy and Jessica. Kind of curious, like the more serious or complex cases, like how many touches are you having with, specific individuals over how long of a period of time? Just, do you have any, not specific, but what's kind of an example of a more complex case?
So the longest time I've worked with a member that I can recall off the top of my head is 8 years. It's not uncommon for me to work with members for anywhere between 1 and 3 years with those more complex cases. And depending on that particular person's their medical condition and whether they have a self-insured or a state-insured employer, and whether there's a lot of factors that are involved, but I could have anywhere between 10 and 20 touches with somebody, and that's just with them alone. That's not with any work that I might do, trying to find out answers for them.
Other comments or questions? I'm sorry, Daryl.
Yeah.
One second. Daryl, go ahead.
Speaking from experience, I went through this process, was retired out and terminated as a result of a duty-related injury. And the process can be, I think, a little overwhelming when you suddenly everything that you've done comes to an end and you don't know where to go. This service that we provide is phenomenal, and I get a lot of phone calls from officers that know I went through it. They look for direction. I answer the questions that I can answer from the police perspective. All of the meat and potatoes I send over, and I've sent quite a few to the team here, and I just want to echo what everybody has said. But even from my personal standpoint, thank you very much for what you do.
Mark, I think maybe you. I'm not sure.
Yes, I would like to say a few things. So I think that it's an invaluable service that we provide that didn't exist before the creation of the Left Plan 2 Retirement Board. Police officers and firefighters have a number of very specialized risks and injuries that they receive as a function of their job. The fact that the Tammy and Jessica are independent experts who serve the best interest of our members and their families has an invaluable impact on those folks who suffer an injury. And my personal experience, I was a union officer in local 452 for half my career, so 25 years, not 25 years, but 16 years. And my personal experience as a union officer is that sometimes when it comes to on-the-job injuries, self-insured employers, they don't do the right thing by the employees and their families. And it's complicated and it's complex. And to have this expert, independent service that we provide to them, it's, like I said, it's an invaluable service that makes their lives better and the lives of their families. And I've had people who called me up and asked me questions, and I don't really know the answer to that. And so we struggled as best we could before the creation of this position. And now I have supreme confidence that we are doing so much better through Tammy's and Jessica's efforts. And it's a tremendous value. And it's one of the best things that happened out of the creation of this board. And it impacts people's lives in a tremendous way. And and I'm thankful for the presentation today, because it will help educate members of the public and the members of the board about how valuable this is. And to talk about money well spent, you couldn't spend money any better than on this service and the salaries and benefits that you guys get. And, you know, if I had any say in it, we'd be able to set the salaries for all the employees of the LEOFF board. And so we're still working through that. And it's a fantastic thing that you do. And it's a very difficult thing that you do, to deal with people's injuries and disabilities. And I really thank you for it, both of you.
Thank you, Mark. I love your passion.
Yeah, I think we all do. Other comments or questions?
I would like to thank Representative Berquist and Senator Holy and some of the past legislators on the board as for setting up this program and then supporting it over the years. I appreciate it. I've told Tammy this, I'll say it to all of you. I get more comments about the job that she does than I get comments about anyone else, including me. And so I'm very proud of the work that they do on behalf of our members. Thank you very much.
Other comments? Seeing none. Thank you, Tammy. All right. Mr. Nelson, admin update.
Okay, I'll start with the low-hanging fruit. We normally have the independent financial audit scheduled for December. Unfortunately, because of some difficulties with the auditor's office working with our payroll team, they were unable to have the work done in time for December. So that will be moved to January, or I wanted to bring this up with you guys, or at your first regular board meeting. Last year, it got bumped to January as well. And in terms of just best practices, you want your annual financial audit to be presented at a full meeting of the board where all board members have an opportunity to answer questions, and it doesn't just turn into some kind of pro forma thing like that. So I wanted to get your preferences in terms of whether you'd rather have the update in January or in May.
Your preference? Go ahead, Daryl.
I think it's important to have it with, in a substantial meeting, an actual, regular meeting. That way, because you do get the questions, I think probably better than at like a Zoom meeting or something of that nature, just my opinion. So I would prefer to put it off until our next regular meeting.
I will say that we've had discussions both with payroll and with the state auditor's office about starting earlier next year and having backup resources available at payroll so that if one person's out, somebody else can help the auditor get the answers to their questions to avoid this in the future. I've made it my position clear to them, which is, it's not acceptable to have it not be able to complete it on time. So either, but with hearing, if it's your pleasure, then we'll just plan on having it at the May meeting.
Does that create any problems for you?
No, no, we'll let the auditor's office know.
Sounds good.
The second piece, if you guys, you all have, all the trustees, all of you have your own your board email addresses. If you don't use those regularly, or if you're having any technical difficulties accessing those, because the technology on those that's handled by SACS, it can be challenging at times, even for somebody who's using it on a regular basis. So please feel free to reach out to Tim if you have any questions or concerns about accessing your LEOFF email accounts. Then
Hey, don't look at me, okay?
I was trying not to look at you, Dennis.
Making a phone call. Okay.
Got it. Okay, but now the big one, all joking aside, that I wanted to bring up in the admin meeting. Yesterday, the governor had a press conference regarding the budget. And during the press conference, he made specific reference to a merger of LEOFF 1 and LEOFF 2, and using $1 billion from LEOFF 1 to help the general fund. And the budget was released, and there was $1 billion on the book from a transfer from LEOFF 1 to the state general fund. Two things about that that I want to bring to your attention. One, it was a total shock to the team. This was not something we'd been asked about or asked to help out about. Didn't do any review or any drafting work on this. So that yesterday was the first that we had heard about this proposal. I got questions from a number of you about what's in the proposal, and yesterday and today also been getting questions from plan members and others. The text of the merger bill was not released. And so what I was told was it was at the code revisor's office. And so it's possible that it could be released shortly, anytime today. I can't really answer any questions about what is in the bill, having not seen the, since the bill hasn't been released. But we did provide you with a written summary. This comes from the governor about what the bill does. We did put out on the website also mention that this was mentioned, this was in the governor's press conference with the governor's summary of what the bill does, and just a point that we will keep that updated as more information becomes available, and then, like any bill, we'll of course be tracking it during session. So given the fact that this was so rapidly emerging and there's not even a bill draft to share, there's not too much there's not anything more that I can say today. As something does become available, if any of you guys have questions, I'd be happy to be available, Jacob, as a resource as well. And then barring any special meeting or anything like that, it would be on the 22nd meeting, assuming that the bill is actually, that a bill is actually introduced. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but that's what I've got for you as far as today.
Questions or comments?
So Steve, you might want to get a different phone number.
Too late, Mark. It's, the only way I'm going to avoid this now is retiring. I've given out my phone number to so many people over the years, and when something like this comes up, they all use it.
We've actually, we've witness protection program. We're putting Steve under that. Changed his name and everything now. So, yeah. I do appreciate Steve. We had a good conversation this morning in our admin meeting. We have no other information. And we did talk about if something develops as a group, we're not scheduled other than a briefing, January, February, March, and April. If we need to bring our group together, we will do so. And we'll make sure we follow the rules of engagement to make sure Tor stays happy with me. And we'll continue to move on. So anything else? All right. Number 9 on the list, and this just makes me smile now, is the public comment section. Staff has received no comments in advance of today's meeting for distribution to the board, so we have no public comment. So there we go. Is there anything else from the group? Ready? You look good? All right. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to adjourn. Is there discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned and we will be together virtually January 23rd.
January 22nd, and it's a full meeting, so typically we don't put action items on there since they're not usually a quorum, but depending on what transpires between now and January 22nd, that might be a very, an unusually active meeting for session.
If that was laminated.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Happy holidays. Enjoy it. Be safe. What's that? Oh, lunch is here.
Lunch is here too.
Lunch is here. Yeah. Thank you.